Good evening. Retail sales in Hong Kong have plunged nearly 10%, the biggest drop since 2009. Business in jewelry, watches and luxury goods in particular has fallen sharply, as mainland visitors spend less these days. This comes amid public calls for mainland visitor numbers to be slashed. Anna Day reports.
Heading into his weekly cabinet meeting this morning, Yeung called for more public discussion on the sensitive issue of mainland visitors. Last week, the chief executive set off a storm by suggesting that the influx of travelers from across the border could be cut by 20%. Share prices of property firms and retailers were hit, and business groups set up in alarm, showing the flip side to concerns that Hong Kong's quality of life has been sacrificed for the tourist dollars mainlanders spend here. Yeung today urged the public to discuss the issue further in the context of falling retail sales over the past 2 months. He said the public feedback last week had been useful for the Hong Kong and central governments to look into the issue, and the latest retail sales figures out today should now be considered. The government this afternoon reported a 9.8% plunge in retail sales for April, compared with a year earlier. It was the biggest single monthly drop since 2009. Sales of jewelry, watches and clocks and valuable gifts, which are mostly snapped up by mainlanders, dropped by almost 40%. The government explained that part of the reason could be a higher comparison base with gold sales, which spiked a year ago when prices plunged drastically. It specifically noted that visitors were spending less after a prolonged period of brisk retail growth. At the same time, sales of other goods which are staple fare for local consumers held firm, reflecting the still positive local consumer sentiment amid full employment. HSBC economist George Yeung acknowledged the boost that mainland visitors give to the local economy, especially at the grassroots level by creating jobs. But he cautioned that there are too many of them entering Hong Kong under the individual visit scheme, which burdens certain districts here. Yeung urged the government to look into it. The current arrangements allow residents of 49 mainland cities to come to Hong Kong under the individual visit scheme without joining package tours as they were required to do in the past. On top of that, registered Shenzhen residents can enter Hong Kong multiple times, a policy many feel should be the first to be scrapped. Last year, 27 million mainlanders came here under the individual visit scheme. A 20% reduction as floated by the chief executive would be equal to a cut of about 5.5 million.
Financial Services Chief Chan Kar-keung said tonight that a change in the macroeconomic environment is to blame for the drop in retail sales figures, rather than the number of mainland tourists.
I believe it's a reflection of the slowdown of the Chinese mainland economy, and as well as a change in the consumption pattern of the incoming tourists. So, of course, it is a trend that we must monitor. It is an issue that certainly affects the trade, and I think from the government's perspective, is a larger trend of the mainland consumption that we must be monitoring and deal with.
Finance Secretary John Tsang echoed Chan's views tonight, although he admitted the government cannot verify if the plunge was directly related to mainland visitors. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying is concerned about how a mainland immigrant involved in a shootout in Kowloon Bay at the weekend got hold of guns and ammunition. But the security minister says it would be difficult due to tight border security and insists the current gun restrictions are adequate. Arthur Urquhart reports.
2 days after the crime drama played out live on TV, police are still maintaining a heavy presence during investigations at this public housing block in Kowloon Bay. Members of the elite police special duties unit stormed a flat in the building on Sunday morning after the body of a man shot to death was found on a higher floor. Inside the flat, they found the suspect, who was said to have shot himself. Today, the back entrance of Lok Cheng House in Kai Ching Estate remained sealed off following the 12-hour drama that began on Saturday night. Residents there are still on edge after a harrowing weekend. This woman, who lives on the 21st floor, where the body of a 43-year-old air conditioning worker was found, said she hasn't slept properly since hearing 3 gunshots outside her apartment on Saturday night. Her young son said he has to hold his mother's hand for assurance whenever they take the lift. The government is offering counseling to residents. This woman says she'll accept the offer as she's still anxious and scared. 6 hours after air conditioning technician Liu Kai-chung was found with 3 gunshot wounds to his chest and back, the elite police squad known as the Flying Tigers closed in on the suspect's 10th floor flat. A 6-hour standoff began before 51-year-old Lee Tak-yan opened the door of his flat and fired twice at the police, who replied with 1 shot, but all missed. The mainland immigrant then appeared on the ledge of his apartment, pointing a gun to his head. After he clambered back into his home, officers stormed the flat. Inside, they found Lee with a gunshot wound to his head. He was declared dead in hospital. Speaking before his weekly cabinet meeting this morning, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying praised the police for their swift action and professionalism in handling the incident. Leung said officers had managed to resolve a major security incident in a short time while keeping other residents safe. He thanked the residents there as well for their cooperation and understanding. The chief executive said the government and police were concerned over how the suspect got hold of the 2 guns found in his flat and are investigating. Security Secretary Lai Tung-kwok said the police would investigate several channels through which the weapons may have been brought into Hong Kong. But he admitted it's a difficult task because of the huge number of people crossing the border daily. Lai, however, insisted current laws restricting firearms are sufficient.
This can be evidenced by the number of cases that using firearms are extremely rare as compared with any other large cities.
The security chief denied concerns expressed by retired police officers that Sunday's operation had been jeopardized by the live media coverage.
I think the result speaks for itself. The whole operation has been conducted very smoothly, and of course the media themselves have fulfilled their duties in reporting, while as the police has conducted a very successful operation.
Relatives of the suspected gunman were at the Fushan Public Mortuary in Sha Tin this morning to identify his body. Lee had lived alone in the building for a year, moving in after serving a 1-year jail sentence for a knife attack on a former neighbor in Yeung in 2011. In that case, a psychological report said he had difficulty controlling his emotions, but was not likely to become violent again. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
A new poll released on the eve of the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square crackdown shows that more Hong Kong people are losing interest in remembering what happened there back in 1989. But organizers of tomorrow's candlelight vigil at Victoria Park still expect a record turnout, despite rival events to be staged by pro-Beijing activists and even pro-democracy groups. Emily Seal reports.
The organizers of the annual June 4th Candlelight Vigil expect a record turnout for tomorrow's event, marking the 25th anniversary of the crackdown on the student-led pro-democracy movement in Beijing. But while they're optimistic, a Hong Kong University poll out today suggests people here are losing interest in remembering the military operation in Tiananmen Square, which shocked the world back in 1989. Results of the university's latest poll were released hours after Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying reiterated that his government will not comment on the issue. HKU interviewed 1,005 residents over the phone and found that 56.1% of them think the mainland's pro-democracy movement should be vindicated. That figure is down 6.7% from last year and is the lowest since 2008. 20% of the respondents opposed vindicating the Tiananmen demonstrators, an increase of 4.3% from last year. The poll found that younger people are far angrier than older respondents about the way Beijing handled the pro-democracy protests. The 25th anniversary of the crackdown also comes amid a widening rift in Hong Kong's pan-democratic camp. But People Power, the Federation of Students, and Scholarism say they will back the candlelight vigil despite their row with other pro-democracy groups over political reform. Their support is welcomed by the organizers, who will be confronted not only with a counter-rally by a pro-Beijing group, but also with rival events staged in Tsimsha-Tsui and Shuangshui by two radical pan-democratic factions. The biggest source of tension is a plan by the Voice of Loving Hong Kong to screen a video outside Victoria Park claiming no one died in Tiananmen Square during the military crackdown. The Alliance in Support of Democratic Patriotic Movements in China has accused the Beijing loyalists of twisting the truth. Alliance leader Li Chegan urged supporters to focus on paying tribute to those who died on June 4th and not be provoked by the pro-China group. In Beijing, security has been tightened around Tiananmen Square on the eve of the anniversary. Dozens of riot police and security vehicles were seen parked around the landmark. Activists and political commentators said China's determination to snuff out any mention of the event is particularly strong this year. In the run-up to the anniversary, about 50 people have been detained, put under house arrest, questioned by police, or simply vanished. In one case, 5 people were charged with causing a disturbance for attending a gathering inside an apartment to commemorate the 1989 movement. Those present included scholars, a prominent Chinese human rights lawyer, writers, and the mother of a student killed by soldiers in 1989. Historian Zhang Lefan, who skipped the gathering, said the government's crackdown is unusually harsh this year because it feels threatened. The discontent within the country is intensifying, so authorities are worried this will create a domino effect and threaten their survival, Zhang said. The June 4th anniversary comes as China struggles with challenges such as slowing economic growth, worsening pollution, widespread corruption, and violence in the troubled western region of Xinjiang. A string of terror attacks in Chinese cities blamed on Muslim separatists from Xinjiang has added to Beijing's security concerns.
Now a look of overseas, starting in Poland, where U.S. President Barack Obama has unveiled a $1 billion plan to boost American forces in Europe. However, it still needs approval from U.S. lawmakers. Obama is in the region for talks on security. Ben O'Rourke reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama touched down in Warsaw this afternoon for a display of military unity with America's Eastern European ally.
I'm starting the visit here because our commitment to Poland's security, as well as the security of our allies in Central and Eastern Europe, is a cornerstone of our own security, and it is sacrosanct.
This means Poland will be used as a base for NATO campaigns, and Obama spoke in front of a dozen freshly delivered U.S. fighter jets.
We've begun rotating additional ground troops and F-16 aircraft into Poland, and this is going to help our forces train together. It's going to help our forces support NATO air missions.
His trip comes amid concerns over civil war in Ukraine, following the US-backed ousting of its former government and widespread rebellion against moves to join Europe in eastern regions. Later in the week, Obama will meet G7 leaders in Brussels and is expected to tell them to pressure Russia to stay out of Ukrainian politics. India's Rural Development Minister Gopinath Mundi died today in a head-on car collision in the capital, New Delhi. He was appointed just over a week ago to newly elected Prime Minister Narendra Modi's right-wing Hindu government.